What's up, y'all? Welcome to Shaw's Corner. In today's episode, I will share with you my expectations of Doc Rivers as a head coach for the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's get into it. Out of all the NBA coaches fired and hired at the end of the 2019-2020 NBA season, Doc Rivers has the most name recognition. Not only did Doc Rivers play in the NBA in the late 80s through the mid 90s, but he also coached the Orlando Magic in the early 2000s and he won Coach of the Year. He was later fired after a 1-10 start, even though he had superstars Tracy McGrady and Grant Hill. Lucky enough, he landed another head coaching position with the Boston Celtics, where he won his very first NBA championship as a head coach in 2008. This particular Boston Celtics team was loaded with Hall of Fame talent. He had Kevin Garnett, Rajon Rondo, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. It was this year that I knew anything was possible if Doc Rivers could tame Paul Pierce's ego, Kevin Garnett's passion, and Rajon Rondo's attitude. So let's fast forward to 2013 through 2020 when Doc Rivers was the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers. During his 7-year tenure with the Clippers, Doc had his fair share of talent. He had Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, Matt Barnes. I think at one point he even had his son on the roster. That didn't end too well. And here recently, he had Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Even with all of that talent, Doc Rivers failed miserably year after year and could not get the Los Angeles Clippers to the Western Conference Finals. Doc Rivers had 7 years, 7 chances, and no dice. In all honesty, when Doc Rivers was hired as a head coach for the LA Clippers, he made being a Clipper fan cool. For many years, the Clippers were a laughing stock in the NBA. It was not until Doc Rivers was hired and Donald Sterling was forced to sell the team and Steve Ballmer purchased the team and actually splurged on real NBA talent and a thriving marketing campaign did it even remotely make sense to be a Clipper fan. You would not get caught dead in a Clippers jersey, especially here in Los Angeles. So here we are today after Lob City has crashed and the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George experiment has exploded. Doc Rivers was fired yet again after another early playoff exit. It was probably the most embarrassing, disappointing loss in all of Los Angeles sports history. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, it was at the end of the 2019-2020 Western Conference semifinals. The Clippers were up 3-1 against the Denver Nuggets while the Los Angeles Lakers waited for the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. All the Clippers had to do was win one game. The Clippers could not. It was terrible. Needless to say, the Denver Nuggets went on to play the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Lakers went on to win the NBA championship. Horrible. However, because of Doc Rivers' success as an NBA coach over the last 20 years, and the fact that he has been a mentor to plenty of NBA players, Doc didn't stay retired very long. In fact, he didn't even have enough time to feel betrayed by the organization that he essentially put on the map. He didn't even have time to really think about the fact that he's the reason why superstar players wanted to come play for the Clippers. Because I have to be honest with you, players were not kicking down the door to play for the Los Angeles Clippers. It just didn't happen. Doc Rivers was hired by the Philadelphia 76ers just 5 days after being fired by the Los Angeles Clippers. The Philadelphia 76ers have serious problems of their own. After finishing 6th in the Eastern Conference and going 43-30, they had to fire Brett Brown just to make room for Doc Rivers. As it stands right now, the 76ers are seriously underachieving with NBA veterans Al Horford and Tobias Harris, let alone future franchise players Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Tobias Harris played for Doc Rivers in Los Angeles, and the challenge for Doc Rivers will be determining whether to take Ben Simmons off of the primary ball handler duties. He's 7 feet tall. And then also, he's going to have to figure out how to motivate and to make sure that Joel Embiid stays focused and can work on his stamina and strength training so that eventually we can see Joel Embiid's maximum potential. Overall, I think Doc Rivers has a lot to prove in the city of brotherly love. Being in the Eastern Conference is way easier to dominate than being in the West. And Philadelphia has a very solid fan base. So as long as Doc is winning, he'll have the support of the Philadelphians. If Doc Rivers fails to make the playoffs his very first year as a head coach of the 76ers, I will venture to say that Doc Rivers' ability to coach young superstars has quickly diminished. Unfortunately, I'm looking forward to see if Elton Brand will regret his decision of bringing Doc Rivers to coach Philadelphia in the first place. All right, you guys, that wraps up this episode of my expectations of Doc Rivers as a head coach for the Philadelphia 76ers. Drop down in the comments and let me know what you think about this video. Let's engage and talk about your expectations of Doc Rivers as well. All right, you guys, that wraps up this episode of Shot's Corner. Be sure you subscribe to this channel, and I will see you guys on the next one. See ya.